I'm Abi Ward, Director of McBride District Public Library, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Stan Walchuk Jr., who is the author of HORRIBILIS, recently published his 5th book. Stan is an educator, zoologist, adventurer, if I may say. And I would love to talk to you, Stan, about this book today.
Thank you, Abby. Glad to be here.
So, Stan, I wondered if you would like to begin with a short reading from the book so viewers can get a sense of what it's about. I can certainly say, without any spoilers, that it is a gripping adventure. It's kind of like a whodunit, but we know whodunit. It's how you find the bear. Whodunit. It is suspenseful. I think readers will really enjoy this work. It's hard to put down, but perhaps you'd like to give us a short reading so people can really hear what it's about.
He lay cliff-edged under a favorite tree, looked out into the black night, sensed the vacuum of space below. The void was a playground of scent, the free flow of air currents, a mosaic of modulating smells. In the daylight, the view of the Great Basin was something to behold. He'd taken refuge under the sprawling, wide-limbed hemlock many times, a commanding cliff-top view over a great alpine meadow with several rubbing posts nearby. Dead or half-dead spruce denied life with busted branches from 20 years of his back scratching. A sudden draft buffeted his backside, and again he lifted his snout to the night. The stink hit like a hammer. He surged to his feet, no mistaking the rancid sweat of human and dog. How could it be? How could they be so close? He stood in the night. An hour slipped by. The stink held steady. For a moment he thought of slipping away. It would be easy to do, but only for a moment. He turned and faced the breeze directly. The sneak would be easy. High alpine suffered little deadfall, few twigs underfoot, little debris. He moved off, slid between wet, feathered branches, stepped soft on carpets of grass, a vindictive stealth fashioned for cutthroats. The bear slipped up to the camp like a wraith in the night. He edged crossways and determined the exact resting place of each person and dog. He stood downwind among the sleeping dogs and listened to their soft sighs, their pitiful nightmare whimpers. HORRIBILIS is a story about a family, Tom Beck, an aging game warden about to retire, and his family. And what happens early in the story is that his granddaughter, who just graduated from high school, is on a camping trip with friends, kind of a grad party near a local lake. In the night, a bear attacks her as she's sleeping, and her boyfriend shows up trying to save her, and he's killed in the process. So that sets off a major chain reaction. The media gets involved, the warden service, the local townspeople, wildlife protection groups get involved. So we have this sort of a situation develop from the mauling that brings to life our attitudes about bears, and really the main theme is about the family and what they go through. So we have this tragedy and what they do to get back to a good place in life, and how it ends up in a better way than it was. I would say the second theme is about bears in our lives. It is not an anti-bear story at all. In fact, the bear is presented well in how the bear might be and what the bear's life is. But the bears in our lives are not what they were perhaps years ago. Things have changed. And the information on bears, how the bear's life is and what's happening in this relationship between man and bear, is really quite revealing. It's an interesting perspective on things. But this whole story happens in a faster paced story that keeps the reader's attention quite well. It's a fairly visual story.
Okay. So my first question is, this is, I believe, your first novel, although you have written other works. What made you take the leap from nonfiction to fiction?
Yes, it was really quite a leap going from true stuff, magazine articles, how-to books, the common man and common life biography. Going to novels was quite a change. There was no real reason for it. It was just a change of life, time for a change. Those years are behind us now, and time to move on. I don't need to look back. It wasn't my first novel, this novel. I started actually 2 novels in the early 80s and never finished them, but spent quite a bit of time with those back then.
Sure. And were there challenges associated with novel writing that you didn't face when writing your other books?
Yes, absolutely huge. A complete change of strategy, your writing style, your emotional investment in a novel is much greater than writing facts. You're dealing with characters in your story who are real people to you, and then you're having people experience their emotional experience while reading your novel. So there was a lot more involved, as you can imagine, as well as you've got the theme, the idea of the story, you've got the plot, you've got characters, developing your characters during the story. You know, you've got the scenes you're working with and all the details. So a novel is much more involved. I did a lot of pre-work in designing and working with everything, where the characters are going, what the scenes are going to be. Basically, it was like a storyboard that I worked on to design the book front to end.
It's interesting you say that about film writing, because I thought when reading this it would make an excellent movie.
Well, thank you, Abby. I find that a real compliment. In our world today, we are very visually programmed, whether it's movies or websites or media. We are very familiar and expect that visual aspect. So if your writing doesn't have that visual aspect in it, I think you'd lose a lot of readers. I think lucky for me as well that I naturally always just thought that way, and I see life that way. It's almost like a movie unfolding. So when I went to write this novel, writing in terms of scenes, like what happened here visually, what's next visually, writing in scenes came naturally, and that's how the book was written. And yeah, I hope that, I'd love to see it as a movie sometime. But as you know, Abby, it's not that easy to get, and no matter how good your work is, it's difficult to get anything turned into a movie. You need to get lucky, meet the right people, and have them believe in the story. We'll try, and it would be nice to see it happen.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I will keep my fingers crossed. That sounds like it could be exciting. So
You can have a free ticket to the premiere.
I'll hold you to that. How much of this, although it's a work of fiction, how much of it is inspired by, your real life encounters with wildlife?
Even though I have spent much of my life in the wilderness, I have had an unusual number of run-ins with bears. I've been charged by grizzlies 4 times, maybe more depending what you call a charge. And even though that's true, I don't hold it against the bear. They live in the wilderness. I'm living out there. I'm spending time out there. So you're going to expect run-ins. That's just the way life goes. Having said that, the increase in grizzly numbers that's happening in many areas, you can expect. I can't see why there's going to be less run-ins in general between society and people spending time outdoors. There's no reason to think there's going to be less. There has been more conflict, more attacks since the early 60s all the way till now, and again, there's no reason to think that that's going to change.
So, in your opinion, what would be a better way of managing this?
caribou and moose and elk numbers have been declining for a number of years, many years, 10, 15, 20 years, and even sooner. They cannot get back to in numbers to support themselves or call them healthy in many areas. Caribou are virtually becoming extinct in areas. So when you combine this with the number of calves that grizzlies and black bears take, as well as the wolves, there needs to be management to help out other animals. Instead, of course, what's happening, the factions favor their animal because they favor, the grizzly bear, for example, or a wolf. And that's fine, but it should not interfere with biologists, zoologists, doctors of biology, who are the ones who need to make the decisions that are fair for all animals and all populations to help them out. And really what's happening is that politicians who are concerned about votes are listening to the public who doesn't know the truth of the numbers of animals, calves. We're talking literally from the DNA hair sample studies. There are many areas that our grizzlies are 2 and 3 times more than previous studies indicated. And in terms of calves killed by bears in the springtime, from when they're born to say mid-June, what happens is that these studies where they now put cameras on the bears, GoPros basically on bears. One of the first studies had a sow with 2 cubs, and in 29 days she killed 31 moose calves. And people thought, well, that's not normal, that's an anomaly or whatever. But the subsequent studies of bears and calf predation, not only in North America, but in Europe as well, with the brown bear and the reindeer, it's been almost like a standard that a bear can take and does take up to like 30 or more calves per month in these times. So the thousands and thousands of calves that are taken from populations that are already devastated and can't recover is just too much, and that's why they can't recover. So instead of managing what needs to be managed the most, basically they do things like take away a few hunting licenses and appease the public, and everybody's happy, but the reality is the management doesn't happen. You can't call it game management. I call it mismanagement if what needs to be managed is not being managed. It's a fallacy. It's a fable, and the general public really needs to know what's going on and needs to support the baby moose and the baby caribou and the baby elk. They may not be as pretty, but they need our help big time.
Okay, well, wonderful. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Well, thank you very much, Abby. I truly appreciate the opportunity. Very grateful.